All right, it's time to talk about one final Power Four conference. That is the ACC, a conference that's not been as deep as you would like it to be. We're hoping to see this conference, the depth of this conference, improve this season. I'm not super optimistic about it. I am hopeful that the middle tier of the conference is better this year than it has been in years past with teams like Georgia Tech. Maybe Syracuse can pop off again. Teams like that can maybe have solid seasons to strengthen the depth of this conference. Let's jump right into it, starting with Clemson. This is a team that's first in returning production in the country. High expectations. You get Cade Klubnik back, one of the top five returning quarterbacks in the country this season. Will be a massive part of this offense. Made lots of strides last season in getting better, was much more productive, made better decisions, was more consistent in the throwing game. He's a dual threat guy. Only Cam Ward and Shador Sanders threw more touchdowns last year than Cade. That will be massive for this offense to see that return again. You get 4 or 5 starters back up front. You are replacing a running back, but this offensive line is going to be good. I think the receivers this year will be much better than they have been. Much more a return to form for what Clemson was when they were on top of the world. They had great quarterback play. They had great receiver play. I think they're going to get that this year. That sets up very well for what should be an exciting season for Clemson. Look out for Gideon Davis in the backfield. True freshman will be an exciting player. They're going to be elite up front on the other side of the football. This is a very dangerous team. TJ Parker had 11 and a half sacks last year. They're getting Will Helt from Purdue. They need to hold up better against the run up front, but otherwise, this should be the elite of elite defenses. This is going to be a top 5 level defense, championship level defense. I think they have championship level offense. This is a Clemson team that expects to win, that expects to at least compete for a national championship. And what a story it would be for Dabo, the little "I told you so" tour that he could have for all the people who've been doubting his approach the last few seasons would be a massive "I told you so" to the faces of everyone who's doubted him. Tyler from Spartanburg would eat crow. Let's check out their schedule. Obviously, they've got a big game coming up this Saturday against LSU. That will show us what we can expect from both teams. I don't want to overreact to anything you see because we're not quite sure what LSU is yet. So don't overreact to that game, but that should tell you a lot. Otherwise, this is not a challenging schedule. They do face some of the top contenders. They do miss Miami, though. That's a massive win for their schedule. Florida State, Duke, SMU is a tough little stretch, but they get a bye week in between those games. Georgia Tech, that's the game I want to key in on early in conference play. Georgia Tech, I expect a lot from this season. We'll get to see how this Clemson defense holds up against the run because Georgia Tech is going to run the football. So we'll see that front tested early in the season, see if they can make the improvements they need to help them win a championship. And obviously, you get that South Carolina game at the end of the season. That'll be a great matchup. Two teams that have playoff hopes, playoff expectations this season will be great matchup there as well. Let's move on to Miami, the other considered playoff contender that we have in the ACC. They expect a lot more out of their offensive line this year than they have in the past. This should be an NFL, lots of players with NFL caliber potential on this offensive line. Obviously, you bring in Carson Beck. He's not going to be Cam Ward, but which version of Carson Beck are we going to get? Are we going to get 2023 version or are we going to get the 2024 version? Because the 2024 version made lots of mistakes, was not very consistent. And if you have that at Miami, I'm not sure that they have enough talent to just push them through like he had around him at Georgia. But if you get that 2023 version, that version that led a lot of people to think that he might be a number 1 overall pick, that he might win a Heisman, if you get that version of Carson Beck, this Miami team can compete. Shannon Dawson is a top-tier offensive coordinator. Let's see if he can get him right. They are bringing in a new defensive coordinator in Corey Heatherman from Minnesota. we'll see how that pans out. How much improvement are you going to get out of them in year one? It's also an adjustment for him. He's used to a much more complementary style of football that they play at Minnesota, a team that holds on to the football for a long time. You're not necessarily going to get that at Miami. Miami likes to be explosive. They like to move the ball quickly. They like to score quickly. They like to put up a lot of points, and that might expose this defense again. But if they can make improvements upon what last year was, I mean, this is a team that just barely missed out on the playoff last year. If they had a better secondary last year, then they might get out of that Syracuse game alive and make a playoff. They bring in a top 3 portal class. I mean, this is a team that expects to make a playoff. This expects to compete for a conference title. I think they have the pieces. I think the defense is the question. If they can improve on defense enough, then you can see this team make a playoff. I'm not going to label them a championship contender, but I do think this is a playoff-worthy team if the defense can improve. Let's take a look at their schedule. We'll learn a lot against Notre Dame. I expect Notre Dame's passing attack to be a little more viable than it was last year. I think C.J. Carr is a better quarterback than, at least a better thrower of the football than Riley Leonard was. Will that offense still hum the way it did with Leonard will be a question. But I think that's going to test them a lot. Obviously, their defense is going to be good as well. So you'll see what this Miami offense can be. Again, they avoid Clemson, so that's big for them. They have a tough little stretch there of Florida State, and Louisville. They get a bye week in between that stretch, which will be key. Those Louisville and Florida games are at home. You got to win at least 2 of those 3, I think, if you want this season to be viable. Otherwise, they don't have that much on their schedule. That SMU game is the other big game for them. Let's take a look at Florida State, a team that had a massively disappointing season last year. You would think that they can't repeat that, right? That you think there's nowhere to go but up for this team. They have high expectations at receiver with Deuce Robinson and Squirrel White from Tennessee. And Tommy Castellanos is talking big talk ahead of this Alabama game. I'm not sure that they're going to be able to back it up, but we'll find out. They did overhaul that offensive line, and Gus Malzahn coming in is a big pickup for this offense. I mean, we know what his offenses did at Auburn. I think this is a team that should improve. We'll see how much they improve. You bring in Tony White as the defensive coordinator. That's a really big pickup. I think that's even bigger pickup than the Gus Malzahn pickup at coordinator. Tony White is a rising star in the industry. He had really, really good defenses at Nebraska. Watch out for that defense. I think that's where I think this team can thrive. The biggest question is 10 was not like that. That was not a 2-10 talent roster for Florida State last year. So if this Alabama game goes south and it goes south quickly, how does the culture hold up? Because the culture fell apart last year. Like it just did. That's not a 2-10 roster, but it was a 2-10 team. And that's culture. And so if this team struggles early, especially against Alabama, how well does this team hold up to that pressure? I think that's the major question I have for Florida State is can you fix a culture that went 2-10? Let's take a look at their schedule. That Alabama game, obviously early. Otherwise, it's not the craziest schedule. They do have to play Miami and Clemson. And they get a Florida game at the end of the season. Tough out-of-conference schedule. Outside of those Clemson and Miami games, I think there's a lot of winnable games here. I think even if you lose all of those big games, 8-4 is a much improved season, but that's not the expectation that they have at Florida State. So we'll see how that plays out for them. Then let's talk about SMU. Team had a really good first season in the ACC, making it to the conference championship game, eventually making it to the playoff. Unfortunate ending to that game, to both the championship game and the playoff games. You get Kevin Jennings back. In big games, he struggled with turnovers, with consistency. Can he clean that up is a major question for them. I mean, he flashed a lot of potential. If all you watched were the ACC championship game and the Penn State game, I'm not sure you saw that potential, but he's a starter there for a reason. He's a very good player. He's flashy. He needs to play under control more in those big games, not let the bright lights get to him. They are unproven at tailback, but they do have a lot of experience at the receiver position. I think this offense under Rhett Lashley can continue to thrive. They have some talent on the line of scrimmage on the defensive side of the football. Isaiah Smith and Cameron Robinson at the edge positions are really, really good. There are questions in the secondary, particularly at corner. They're going to need players to step up there. Let's take a look at their schedule. You have Baylor and TCU games in the non-conference. Those will both be really good tests for them. Will show you what this team could be. I think both Baylor and TCU expect to have good seasons. I expect those to be really good games. You do hit Clemson and Miami in conference play. If you can pull one of those, then you should be in the conference title game. We'll see. That Louisville game is another big game for them down the stretch. We'll see how this plays out for them. Speaking of Louisville, you get Miller Moss for Louisville. He had an up and down season last year at USC, eventually losing the job to Jaden Mayava, I think. Right? You get Isaac Brown and Duke Watson back, who had almost 1,800 yards. Jeff Brom, I trust the Jeff Brom offense implicitly. They're very experienced at receiver. I expect I expect Miller Moss to thrive in this system. Where they need to get better is on the defensive side of the football. They were 100th in the country in pass defense last year. They're bringing in a lot of transfers. Not very many of them or any of them have played Power 4 football before. So this is going to be their first time at this level. And those kind of players can be a crapshoot at times. So we'll see how that plays out for them. They are going to be experienced at linebacker. That needs to be the strength of this defense. Let's take a look at their schedule. Not a whole lot in the non-conference slate. They do play Pitt. That's not a non-conference game. Sorry, scratch that. They do play Kentucky at the end of the year. I don't expect much from Kentucky this season. So you expect to get out of that unscathed. They do catch Clemson and Miami and SMU. So it's a tough conference slate, but I think this is a Louisville team that can compete in those games, especially those SMU and Miami games. Maybe that Clemson game is too much. Just the talent composite roster maybe outweighs them. I'm not sure that's that big enough of a gap in those Miami and SMU games, so I think they can compete in those games. Sets up to be an interesting season. I think these are really the four contenders. Georgia Tech, who we're going to talk about next, is the only other one who I think has a real shot here at the crown. So let's get into them. I mean, we know what they are running the football. You're going to get Haynes King back. You're going to get Jamal Haynes back at running back. That offense can be really, really good. The key to that offense, though, is the offensive line. You watched that Georgia game back last year. They were pushing Georgia around on the offensive line, and they are replacing a lot up front. So how quickly is that going to gel is a big question for them, because if they can't get push up front, this is not a team that will go anywhere, because they rely so heavily on that offensive line. The offensive line is the key to this football team. If the offensive line is good, they can bully people up front, then this team is going to be really good. If the offensive line can't do that, this team is going to struggle. Their secondary on the other side of the football should be really good. Their defensive line needs more production. You have lots of questions about what they're going to be there. They are returning a lot on defense, but they are getting a new defensive coordinator. So we'll see how that plays out for them. Let's take a look at their schedule. Colorado game on Friday night is going to be a really interesting game. That's a team that you expect to dominate, to be able to dominate up front. Colorado, under Deion Sanders, has not been good up front, and that's the strength of this Georgia Tech team. That's where they expect to bully them around. That Clemson game, also early in the season, massive, massive game. So this offensive line needs to gel. It needs to gel quickly, because they're going to get tested, and they're going to get tested early. The good news for them is after that, their schedule opens up quite a bit. They won't be tested that heavily again until that Georgia game. That Duke game is probably the key to the rest of their schedule. If they can get that game out, I'm not sure anybody else can really test them. Let's talk about North Carolina. You get Bill Belichick. What are you going to get out of that? Obviously, there's been some drama surrounding his teeny bopper girlfriend, but he's an excellent NFL coach. Won a ton of Super Bowls. He knows football. He knows more about football than most of the rest of the country ever. So what are you going to get out of them? They have a wide open schedule. Non-conference games against TCU and maybe UCF are tough, but the schedule opens up really well for them. They did bring in the 9th-ranked portal class. They brought in Gio Lopez from South Alabama. How well does that pan out at quarterback is a major question. I think the secondary of this team is going to be a strength for them. I just don't know how quickly it's going to come together. Like, we know he can coach football. We know he can coach. But he's not coached in college in a very long time. So we'll see how that comes together. It'll be very interesting for them. Let's talk Syracuse. Massive Fran Brown fan here. I mean, who isn't? Just go listen to him in interviews, in press conferences. You will fall in love with him very quickly. Steve Angeli is the quarterback now. You saw what he could do in relief for Riley Leonard. I think this is a guy who can run a competent offense at Syracuse. They are replacing a lot of skill talent. That's going to be a major question for them on that side of the football. I think this secondary is going to hold up on the other side of the football. They need to get a lot better up front, stopping the run. I expect to step back from them this year from what they were last year, but I really like what Fran Brown is building. I think they're going to continue to level up Syracuse if they can hold on to him. Let's take a look at their schedule real quick. That Tennessee game sets up as an intriguing game. I don't think Tennessee is as good as people think they are. I do think their talent roster is better than Syracuse's, so they might get by on that alone, but we'll see what Syracuse can bring in that game. Otherwise, this is a pretty tough schedule. You also get a Notre Dame game late in the year. You play both Clemson and Miami. You also play SMU. You play Georgia Tech. You play North Carolina. You play Duke. You play basically all of the teams in the ACC that you expect to be solid or good or even great. A pretty tough schedule for a team that I expect to not be as good as last year. I think this could be a tough season. But if you can find a way to make a bowl game, I think you can build off of the success of that season. Let's take a look at Duke. Darian Mensah, all the rage this offseason. I think lots of articles coming out about how much they spent to get him. He flashed a lot at Tulane, but he needs to be more consistent. They do get 4 or 5 starters back up front. That's going to be huge for them. And if Jaquez Moore is healthy and can remain healthy all season, that'll be a good addition to their backfield. I think this offense could be really good. On the defensive side of the football, they had the most sacks in the ACC last year out of any team. I expect that to continue. I think this Manny Diaz defense is going to continue to wreak havoc in the backfield. I think this is a Duke team that sets up well to have some success. Let's take a look at their schedule. That Illinois game early in the season will tell us a lot about both of those teams. You play Tulane, which is where they got their quarterback from, and also just a really solid Group of 5 conference team. That should be an interesting game. Otherwise, you play Georgia Tech and Clemson in consecutive games. You get a bye week in between. I think that stretch will be really important for them. You do play Syracuse and Cal both on the road in back-to-back weeks. That'll be a tough stretch as well. Not that I expect a lot from Cal, but that's a tough road trip to go all the way across the country. So we'll see how that plays out for Duke. Let's talk about Pitt. You get Eli Holstein back. You get Desmond Ridder back and healthy at the running back position. You need those receivers to step up, though, and you need the portal help that they brought in on the offensive line to pan out. This is a team that needs to run through its offensive line if they want to be successful. This is a team that wants to play physical football, and that offensive line is going to be key to that. On the other side of the ball, Kyle Lewis and Rasheem Biles are stars at the linebacker position, but they need help, especially in the secondary and up front. Corner and edge, those are your biggest questions. How good can they be? Can they get production out of those guys? If they don't hold up, that could spell trouble for this Pitt team. Let's take a look at their schedule. Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, Miami. Those are the last 3 games of the season. Those will be really tough games. You do play Louisville early on, but outside of that, if they can run through that schedule. All right, my camera died, so we're just going to run quickly through the rest of these teams with a lower quality camera, my base webcam. Let's talk about Boston College. Bill O'Brien is their coach. Had a more respectable season than they've had in the past last year. The line of scrimmage needs to get a lot better. The secondary should be the strength of this defense. We'll see how that pans out for Boston College. Cal, big upset in the quarterback battle last season, or not this offseason, in Jaron Kiwi Sagapolutele, beating out Devin Brown, who transferred in from Ohio State. Really interested to see how that plays out. Is it just a case of a true freshman coming in and being significantly better than expectations, or was Devin Brown just not the guy, not somebody who can play at a good enough level anywhere? So interested to see how that plays out at Cal. Outside of him, you get Brian Harsin leading this offense as the coordinator. Interesting coach to be back in the fold. They did lose all of their depth at running back, who they were raving about earlier in the season or in the offseason. So that's going to be a challenge for them. The O-line last year was terrible. It needs to be a lot better. And they're replacing a lot in the secondary. I think this is going to be a long season for Cal, but we'll see how it plays out. NC State, they're replacing both of their coordinators. They lost Casey Concepcion, who was a big part of their offense last season. They should be more up-tempo with their new offensive coordinator. And DJ Moore on the other side of the ball should wreak havoc in the backfield. I think this is an NC State team that is solid and can compete in lots of games. We'll see how well they can hold up. Virginia, hot seat year for Tony Elliott. This is kind of the do-or-die season. You get Chandler Morris at quarterback from North Texas. We'll see how that plays out. Only Florida State had a worse offense last year in the ACC, so not good setup. They need to be a lot better. They should be experienced at linebacker. Otherwise, you see lots of portal players throughout the rest of that defense. Virginia Tech, another team in year 4 of a coach, do-or-die season for Brent Pry at Virginia Tech. They did get a new offensive coordinator in Philip Montgomery, former Tulsa head coach. We'll see how that offense plays out. Can Kyron Jones stay healthy, and can he unlock his potential? I think he's a guy who flashes, but he needs to be more consistent. He needs to do it every down, every game, and really bring it. They're replacing all 5 of their starters up front. That's going to be a real problem for this offense, and we'll see how well that happens. You get also a new defensive coordinator. I think their defensive line should be good, but you have questions everywhere else on that defense. So we'll see how that holds up. And then Wake Forest, Jake Dickert from Washington State. I expect this Wake Forest team to improve. There's a lot more good energy around the program with the new coach. Robbie Ashford, I think, will be a really good fit in his system. They do return 3 of 4 of their top tacklers from last season. So I think this defense at least has some experience under its belt. Yeah, I think there's positive energy. I think there's a team that can get back to a bowl game and start building something again in Wake Forest. Then there's Stanford. I don't know what else really to say about Stanford. We all watched that Week 0 game against Hawaii. They lost to Hawaii. They're going to try to play a more physical brand of football. I'm not sure how well it's really going to work, but I mean, it's not going to work. But maybe I think that's the road to success. I just don't think it's going to work this season for them. Yeah, interesting season in the ACC coming your way. Let me know what dark horses you think will actually compete this season for an ACC title in the comments. Drop a like, subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you next time.